Bloom, and in today's video we actually have quite a bit to go over. So feel free to just jump to the section that you want to watch. So in today's video we are going to start off by going over the deck that I took to my last locals. I'm going to be talking a bit about how cards performed, ratios if they were fine, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about some cards I'm thinking of taking out from the deck and what I'm going to be putting in place of that. I'll be showing a 2-card combo that you can do with the Mimighoul stuff now if you put in the new stuff. And lastly, I'm going to be talking about the synergy between Purrely and Mimighoul. So yeah, this is going to be a fun video. Let's just jump right on into it. So starting off, for the Purrely package, I've been playing 3 copies of Purrely, 1 copy of Purrely. I've talked a bit about this already, but we are not playing the field spell, and so because of that, I want to be able to guarantee that we can at least search the Purrely heap to shuffle back the names, and that's where 3 copies of Lily comes up, and being able to also just have Purrely as an extender is nice. Usually you don't end up playing more than 2 to 3 quick plays in a turn, and usually you only end up bringing maximum 2 to 3 bodies off of that. So it's been fine with the ratios that it's at. Next, I played 2 copies of My Friend Purrely. You could play a third. It's a good card. I just don't because the effect is a once per turn, and I don't actually end up seeing myself go into like a turn 4 or turn 5 anymore. If I do, it's usually at a position where I'm already set up an X Purrely Noir. And so, yeah, as of right now, just 2 copies of My Friend Purrely has been fine, but you could totally play a third. Next, you max out on all the quick plays. This is pretty standard. You do this in every Purrely deck list. The cards are all E-tellies, and it just makes so much sense to play every single copy you can. Lastly, we have the 1 Yeep. As I mentioned, you use it mainly to be able to shuffle back the names. Sometimes I actually just add it to hand and then discard it off of a quick play to summon a Purrely or Purrely, and then just use them as link fodder, and you can just shuffle them back in. So it's fine as is, even if you don't use it to rank up. The more important thing is just being able to send it to the graveyard so that you can dump it, so that you can recur the names in the graveyard. But yeah, it's also really good as a rank 7 play. But yeah, that's all for the Purrely package. That is 17 cards. Next, for the Mimighoul stuff, I play 3 copies of the Dragon. This is the best card in your deck. It gets all your Mimighoul stuff started. You can use it to search any Mimighoul spell or trap, and so it's usually going to be either the Maker or the Field spell, but if you've got access to both, you just search the room off of them. And so yeah, it's a really good card, gets all your combos started. You want to always see it whenever you can. We then play 2 copies of the Archfiend. It's a very powerful card, but my main issue with it is that by itself, it doesn't really do anything. So it's not really the best to just see in your hand, but it helps facilitate all your Mimighoul 2-card combos. So yeah, you usually want to see this paired with another Mimighoul card to really get stuff going. We do have the 1 Cerberus, and I've been liking what the card does, but I still don't see myself playing more than 1 copy of it. It's great at getting an additional name on the board, and it also helps you find out what your opponent is on usually. So it's really good for what it does. But yeah, usually use it as the last card you want to search off of Maker. But yeah, that's basically what that's for. We play 3 copies of the Field spell plus a Terraforming because the Field spell is broken. It's able to, once per turn, search any Mimighoul monster and add it to your hand either from the deck or graveyard. It's great for that recursion value, but along with that, it helps make your Mimighoul monsters bigger, and it makes it so that if it also makes it so that if either player has a face-down defense position monster, the most likely won't be able to actually attack the other person unless they have a special summon monster from like a previous turn. So it's really good for what it does there. Plus, the normal summon slash tribute summon lock is very powerful. We then play two copies of the Maker. This is almost a one card starter. It is a little bit dependent on what you hit, but it's very strong on what it does. Very good extender. You're always searching it off of the dragon just to get your plays going. And then lastly, the one room. It's just good for what it does. With the field spell out, this is a normal summon lock, plus your opponent can't attack into you with monsters. So it's really good. And then you're also able to place a dragon or an archfiend directly from the deck onto the opponent's board. So very good. Lastly, for the non-engine that I play, we are on 2 Ash. It's solid for what it is, an interruption that basically can interrupt every deck at some point. Droll feels sort of mandatory this format. It's really good at just shutting down the opponent from adding more cards to their hand. So even if they do set up an impressive board, as long as you are able to break it, you can at least you're at least you at least don't have to worry about follow up as much unless they have stuff in the graveyard. But yeah, Droll just sort of feels mandatory to hit your opponent's follow up. I'm currently on 3 Valor and I'm thinking of taking it out. The card is good. It's a level 1, basically an imper monster. And yeah, it's good for what it is, but a lot of decks just feel like they easily play through imperms and Valors right now. So that's part of the reason why I'm thinking of switching it out. To be fair, my matchups from the last locals were Tempai as well as Ritual Beast, and Valor is just sort of useless against both of them. But yeah, that's something that I might be switching out in a future deck list. Let's just go on to the next card. We have the one Call by the Grave. Since graveyard effects are king right now, it just feels mandatory to have it. Even if you don't use it to like stop an opponent's hand trap, you always have a decent play to banish with Call by the Grave. So yeah, just play it, even though it's a one of. It's very powerful for what it does. I then play the 2 Thrust and the 1 Talents because you are able to activate the stuff on the opponent's board. So these are always live if you get the Mimighouls to flip. And if you just give the opponent a monster after they've activated a hand trap, you can just use Thrust to search any engine you want. So we can use it to search Maker and just go into the Mimighoul plays, or you can use it to set the room or any of the other traps that I have in the side. Lastly, we have the Angel statue. I love the Silhouette Rabbit in almost every deck that I play now, so I just sort of have to include it. But yeah, that is the non-engine. Let's go into the extra deck real quick. So going off to the extra deck, we play 1 Zeus, 1 Downard, 1 Assembled Nightingale. Pretty standard Zeus package because we play a bunch of level 1s, so this makes sense, and it's really strong for the going second play into something like a Shifter. Next, this card is specifically for the Mimighoul stuff. You get any 2 level 1 bodies, make this guy, detach a material, and you're able to flip all the monsters that you gave your opponent. And basically, when you detach the material, you change the battle position of all your opponent's monsters to attack position. And so yeah, any monster you've given your opponent to flip will be flipped by this. Next, we have the Purrely package. So I play basically 1 copy of each of the Purrely XC's monsters. In this deck, we can OTK the opponent with the Mimighoul field spell out. So it just makes sense to play the X Purrely Happiness because you can OTK here. And even if you don't, you do a bunch of damage and you just make a huge material Zeus on top. So yeah, pretty solid going second play. And all of the rank 2s plus X Purrely Nor. Next, we have the SP Little Knight, because it's a very generic, strong Link 2. I already mentioned it, but Silhouette Rabbit goes in every list I play now because it's my favorite card. And then we have the Relinquished Anima. It just makes it so that going second, you could potentially go into an SP Little Knight play and banish stuff on their board. Plus, it's also an extra interruption, so why would you not? Oh, before I forget, Silhouette Rabbit was honestly very strong against the Tempai matchups that I played. You're able to get two interruptions off of it. One, which is you're able to get the spell Trap Pop when you summon the Angel statue, which on its own just makes it so that your opponent's Tempai stuff are not going to be protected. And then when your opponent attempts to like synchro summon, you let them resolve the synchro summon, and then when they bring out the synchro monster, you just resolve your angel statue so that the monster never hit the board. And so it gets off the two bodies on their board, plus they never got to their synchro summon. So it becomes a little hard for the Tempai player to sort of play through that sometimes. But yeah, really strong card against that matchup. The last two cards that I was playing was the Typhon, and we also played the 31. I'm actually thinking of cutting these two guys out. The 31 mainly because I added it in there because we were playing the 13, but after playtesting it, it's become very relevant. You never really need to make the second one, and even then, the 13 and 31 lock that you can do with both of them out isn't particularly effective. Based off of whenever you activate it, monsters on the board at that point have to attack this monster. So if it leaves the board, those monsters cannot attack. However, if they synchro summon or just link summon into something else afterwards, those the new monsters that they made can. And so yeah, it's a interesting card. I just don't feel like it's really needed. Next, we have the Typhon, and this one is great. It's really good to be honest, but I've had a love-hate relationship with the card. Every single time I have a spot to make it, it helps you break through a board, but you don't really hit the opponent's follow-up, and you can't really extend on it either. So if the opponent is able to make any form of follow-up, they're able to just go on top, swing into this, do a bunch of damage, and you end up losing the match anyways. That being said, though, when it does come to time, this card can be clutch. So I might consider just putting it in the side just to help break through boards in that final game and just get a little bit of damage through. But yeah, other than that, I'm still thinking of taking these two cards out from the main. Lastly, for the side deck, we are on 2 copies of Ogre. It's good because it's able to hit everything basically. You can, as long as your opponent activates an effect on the field, you can activate this and pop the card. It's great against the field spells, a little bit of the back row, and sometimes if you're facing an Xyz deck, you might just not want to let them have the Xyz body on board. I'm talking about the fish stuff. So yeah, it's good against all of that stuff. We have the 2 copies of the Cosmic Cyclone. Again, just hit a bunch of back row. I chose to get on 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, and I honestly enjoyed being able to search this or just top deck with it in this match. So yeah, it's solid. I might even consider putting it in the main just because the Purrely Mimighoul stuff feels really solid as like a board breaker variation of Purrely. Next, I have the Change of Heart and the Harpy's Feather Duster. You're playing Thrust, so it's a lot easier to search these 1-ofs, so just include them in there. We have the D Barrier, and funny enough, I don't think I ever actually searched this card off of Thrust, because the next card, the Harpy's Featherstorm, is just so much more damaging, and pretty easy to get to in this deck because you just make the assembled Nightingale and you get the thrust and you're pretty much set. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to continue playing the DBR. It's still going to be in the list for now, but Harpy's Featherstorm is like the ideal thing that I search off of Thrust going first. Next, we have the Black Coat Laughs. It's good whenever it does come up, and it's got a good graveyard as well as on the field effect. I just haven't had a situation where I really needed to use it, at least in the last locals that I took it to. And then the last three cards are Imperms to basically just switch out with the Veilers. Again, this might be something I cut from the list for something else like a Droplet, but as of right now, that's what my deck list looks like. Okay, so we already talked about the deck. Let me show you the cards I'm thinking of switching in. So I already showed you the two cards that I figured were not as great for the deck. And what I'm thinking of actually putting in place of these guys is a small Unchained package. You could just play it at just the two extra deck monsters and you will still be able to do some stuff. But I'm also including the two bricks, Sharvara and the Trap. And the reason why is because this lets you just extend onto the plays and basically it adds more to your board. So let me show you what I mean by that. This stuff is basically something you can make with the... So basically these two cards are stuff you can make with the Mimighoul stuff. So let me just show you what I mean by that. So for you to be able to do this, you need access to to any two of these four cards, and you will be able to basically do it. So let me just show you with like these two cards. Let's say you open the Dungeon and the Archfiend. Let me just move all this away. So yeah, let's say you just open with the Dungeon and the Archfiend. You can activate the field spell, use it to start off and search off for the dragon. And then dragon will, you'll summon the dragon and on summon add the maker to hand. So now from here, because you have the Archfiend in your hand already, it doesn't really matter what you give the opponent because you can just summon the Archfiend from hand and force the flip. So we'll activate the maker, and maker will... Oh, this is the wrong spot. Let me put this here real quick. So maker is going to reveal the Cerberus and the Archfiend here. And basically, it doesn't really matter which card you give the opponent, because we'll be able to still make sure that both of these guys' effects resolve this turn. So let's just show you what I mean. Let's say 1, 2, 3, the opponent gets an Archfiend. 4, 5, 6, they get the Cerberus. Okay, so this is the 1, which is the best case scenario. So you give the Archfiend to the opponent, and then in the same effect, you summon the Archfiend from your hand. So then this flips the Archfiend, comes to your side of the board. Your opponent discards a card, you draw a card. From here, we're actually just going to activate the Cerberus to place it on the opponent's board. And I'm going to take these two guys, and we'll use that to make the number 13. From here, we will detach to force the Cerberus to flip. And then Cerberus will trigger, giving us a random body to work with. Now from here, the cool thing is, you have two Fiends already on the board. So you can just take both of these guys, link to them to make the Yama. And so Yama on summon will add to the hand the Sharvara. And in a normal Unchained combo, you might actually just use the Sharvara here. but that's not ideal because then you do get fiend locked. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take the Yama and the monster the opponent gave us, and that's going to be linked off to go ahead and make the Soul of Rage right here and now. From here, now that the Yama is in the graveyard, we will use the Sharvara to summon itself by popping the Soul of Rage. And now that this is out on the board, these two guys will trigger because a Fiend monster was destroyed. So Soul of Rage is actually going to add any Fiend monster from our graveyard back to our hand. And so this will in fact be the Archfiend, which is crazy that we're able to recycle that. And then we're able to banish the Yama to summon back the Soul of Rage, and then immediately destroy a card on our side of the board, which will be the Sharvara. And now we get the Sharvara graveyard effect, which will in fact get us the abominable, the trap that we search off of it. From here, since we have the trap, we can actually bring back the Soul of Rage during the opponent's turn. So we will link to these two guys to bring out my favorite monster, the Silhouette Rabbit. And so Silhouette Rabbit on summon will search our copy of the Angel statue. And place it directly from the deck. From here, we will make sure to also place the Abominable Chains so that we can revive back the Soul of Rage. And then we actually did not use the Archfiend effect to place on the opponent's board this turn, so we will in fact do that. And so if the opponent wants to play, they will most likely have to flip the Archfiend, which will give us another draw. So in the best case scenario, we get to hand rip the opponent for 2, we draw 2, and we still set up this board that doesn't look like much right now. But it's actually quite impressive how much interruptions you get. And in the case that we end up giving the opponent the Cerberus, it's still not the worst because we still get a draw 1 and we'll have a copy of the Archfiend in hand still. So yeah, what does this board actually provide us? Well, the opponent will potentially have to flip the Archfiend at some point, just because the field spell will not let them normal summon. And even if they get around it by special summoning, we still have the Maker in the graveyard to force the flip by banishing it. So this will get flipped at some point during the opponent's turn. And when that happens, we will draw 1, and the opponent is forced to discard a second card. From here, we still have the spell trap pop from Silhouette Rabbit when we activate the Angel statue. And then again, if the opponent wants to inherently summon, we can also just use the Angel statue to basically negate the summon. Lastly, we still have the Abominable Chains. Use it to bring back the Soul of Rage, and then we can use it with an opponent's special summon monster to link to into the strong card SP Little Knight, which then will also have another 2 interruptions, 1 on summon, and then 1 at any point your opponent attempts to activate an effect. So what this 2-card combo gives you is a potential draw 1 to 2. You will still be there in hand advantage in all of these scenarios. So it's a hand rip of 1 to 2, plus you have a spell trap pop, an inherent summon negate, monster steal basically, because you get a link summon with the Soul of Rage and the opponent's monster. And then you still have the SP Little Knight banish on summon, plus the temporary banish till the end of the turn. So it's something like 7 interruptions, plus you get to draw 1 to 2 cards and hand rip the opponent for 1 to 2. So it's very powerful. And this is just like an end board that we can now do with the Mimighoul stuff by adding the small Unchained package. So I think it's worth it. I'll be messing around with it. And yeah, it's something that you might want to consider adding to your own Mimighoul decks. So lastly, let's just talk about the synergy between Purrelys and Mimighouls. And to start off with, it's funny to say, but the synergy is there's no inherent synergy per se, but it's more about the fact that both of their playstyles just sort of complement each other. With the Mimighoul stuff, you are able to usually hand rip the opponent for one, draw a card, or just place a monster on the opponent's board, which doesn't seem like much at first. But when you pair it with the Purrely stuff, um, what you get is astonishingly surprising. Um, the Mimighoul stuff, in a weird way, complement the rank 2 monsters and help them get to the rank 7s a whole lot easier. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's bring out the rank 2s. So starting off, let's actually just talk about the Purrely Noir. This card doesn't really need any help whatsoever because you activate a quick play and you already get the trap. So this one's pretty much set however you want. But in the case you do add a pretty memory, you can always just send another card on your side of the board to the graveyard to attach a Mimighoul monster that you gave your opponent. So it just adds an additional material to this. Next, we already talked about it a little bit, but the normal play that you want to do with Plump is either going second, you want to be able to add a pretty memory and another spell in your graveyard, and you usually use the effect of pretty memory to get that 5th material by attaching an opponent's monster or card on their spell trap zone. So it's a very strong play that you can do going second. But going first, unless you opened an extra quick play, this was not possible. Now, however, because you can just give the opponent a monster, as long as you get access to the pretty memory, the Mimighoul monsters are just free additional materials you can attach under your Purrely XYZ monsters. So this guarantees, in a weird way, Plump to get to an Purrely Noir, even going first. Next, we have the Purrely Happiness synergy. And it's a funny one, to be honest. So the Mimighoul monsters, their effect to flip and come back to your board, as well as do all the other negative stuff, only happens if they get flipped during the main phase. And so if you attack into a Mimighoul monster that's face down defense position, since it's during the battle phase, they will still be on the opponent's board. So as it is, Purrely Happiness, you usually can't OTK the opponent if they have just one monster. But if you give the opponent a monster, you can actually do that now, which is impressive. But what's even cooler is the fact that the Mimighoul monsters actually have a decently high defense. If you open a dragon or the Cerberus, you can put it on the opponent's board, and the Purrely Happiness cannot actually beat over that. So even if the opponent has no other cards, you can just put a dragon, swing into it with Purrely Happiness however many times you want, and it helps guarantee getting all the additional materials to make your Purrely Noir as well. Plus, since they actually both have 2k defense, you don't take any damage from this interaction. If you do open Cerberus, you'll take 200, I believe, but I digress. It doesn't really matter. You're just able to search as many stuff as you want off of the happiness now. So that's really crazy in a weird way that it helps make that play. Lastly, Purrely Beauty. The synergy that it has with the Mimighoul stuff is honestly a support more for Mimighoul. So whenever you attach a quick play to the Purrely Beauty, you're able to change the position of a monster on the opponent's board. And this was the main reason why I started looking into playing Purrely Mimighoul. Because you would play a quick play and you're able to flip the Mimighoul monster that you gave your opponent. So this just makes the E Purrely Beauty attach effect a nuke on the opponent's board. You give them a dragon, attach a quick play, you force the flip of the dragon, which board wipes them. And what's even crazier after that is if they have any spell traps later, you can just use the effect of Pretty Memory sending the dragon to the graveyard, and you attach their spells and traps as well. So being able to make a beauty and doing the dragon play is honestly a very solid board wipe on the opponent's board. It just gets rid of so much. And that's already a 4 material E Purrely Beauty. If you attach another quick play, that's 5 materials. So it's really strong. There is the fact that all the Purrely monsters and the Mimighoul monsters are level 1. And so this helps facilitate the play to just get to your number 13 and number 13 or 31. It doesn't really matter which one you play, but the fact that you're able to just use 2 level 1s to guarantee flipping a monster you give your opponent is just something that no other version of Mimighoul can do. Purrely being a level 1 just helps facilitate the flips of Mimighoul just a little bit more than you would get with the other variations. There is, I guess, one last thing. Let me pull up the Mimighoul field spell. So, again, this is another playstyle thing, but before, for a Purrely player, they could put an X-Purrely Noir on the board, and let's say the opponent uses a Kaiju on the X-Purrely Noir. You get back a bunch of follow-up, but you're still stuck with the fact that you're still probably going to lose the match because the opponent can just swing into your board and you don't really have any other interruption except whatever you drew. But now with the Mimighoul dungeon, you're also able to facilitate forcing the opponent to not be able to attack. And so it just helps guarantee surviving for that next turn. And then both of these together just do so much because of that. Because the Purrely side is pretty offensive, and the Mimighoul side is actually more on the defensive side. But both packages together are a control-based deck. So it's funny, but they just complement each other so well. So yeah, that's everything I had to say about the synergy between the two decks. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one.